Johannes Steenekamp, a pathologist testifying yesterday in the High Court in Pretoria, he gave details about the findings when he's examined Senzo Meyiwa's remains. The court today expected to hear from a ballistics expert following the chilling details from that pathologist. So did Meyiwa even stand a chance? Newzroom Afrika's Nqobile Madlala was in court for us yesterday. And some chilling testimony indeed about Nqobile, the way in which the gun was pointed at Senzo Meyiwa and whether in fact there was any chance that he would survive.
Well, indeed, Michelle, I mean, from what we heard from the pathologist explaining that this was an acute wound, which made it even more difficult. I mean, when he explained the fact that there was bleeding inside, I mean, to be exact, he said there was about 1,700 milliliters of blood that was internal bleeding from that wound. And when he explains it, he says because Senzo Meyiwa was fit, so he could have survived minutes, but he couldn't have survived an hour. And in itself, you can see that he really just stood no chance, that he was going to die from that wound, that of course he says that it touched the very important organs, which was the heart, the arteries, as well as the lungs. And because of that, we saw the collapse of the kidneys. So very graphic when you hear from the pathologist and how he saw those granules inside the body, and he could then see that this was pressed against his chest. Now, can you imagine, Michelle, somebody is right in front of you, and according to the pathologist, that means they were looking at each other. I mean, he's even saying that there is a good chance that it's either Senzo Meyiwa was leaning, trying to perhaps or push the gun away, but it then pointed this direction, going out the other direction, which basically just means that he was just standing no chance, you know. So now, if you look at what the pathologist had to say in terms of how his whole body could no longer function and what this meant for him, it meant his life was just ending there. But now the question around defense was that defense is trying to figure out that if this happened in the kitchen, then how did he end up in the lounge? And this is where then the details started being very important. And they were asking the pathologist, and of course some details cannot be given by the pathologist, and this is where the ballistic expert is expected now to look into those details. You will remember that the ballistic expert can give you details around what was happening when the gun was pointed at this person. So what happened in the gun before the bullet left, what happened when the bullet hit the body, and what happened when it was leaving the gun itself. So all those details become very important. What that means is that they can get more of those details, because Mshololo went up to say that what are the chances that the person that actually shot at Senzo was a bit taller? And that's why then you have this acute wound. Right. And of course the pathologist said, I can't explain that. The ballistic experts can probably explain to those things. They were asking things like, if he was in the kitchen, then shouldn't have bullet gone through the door? Which way was it going to go? So all those details you are going to get from the ballistic expert in terms of the trajectory, how far it went, all sort of details in terms of what really happened in that final hour. And if you think about it, the details are now starting to come in. We now know the gun, where it was found, and we know from the people that are closer to the person that is accused at this point that where they found the gun, how the gun was found. Now we're looking at the gun itself. So the spotlight is at that final hour, in that final minute, what happened to Senzo Meyiwa. Yeah, suddenly all of the bits of evidence and testimony we've been hearing over the past few weeks, it's starting to come together. Nqobile Madlala, thanks very much indeed for coming into studio, giving us that update. The case is back in the High Court in Pretoria today.